everybody, welcome back to another movie review. Hope you guys have been enjoying the content on the channel as of late. Funny story with this review. I recorded it last night, because typically when I watch films, I usually, right after I watch them, I just shoot the review, because I usually have my thoughts, fresh and ready. It turns out I forgot to plug in my mic, so everything was muted on the video. So now I have to redo the review. So hopefully now with my thoughts already, digested and processed, hopefully this will be a more condensed review, because that one was more of a 15-minute review, but I make no promises. So, excuse me if the lighting is also a bit dark. It's just because this is daytime. Typically I shoot at nighttime just because the lighting in here gets not too great, so excuse me if it's a bit dark. But we're going to jump into this review. That review, what we're doing, is the latest from Richard Linklater. Interesting filmmaker. Did films such as Boyhood, which I enjoy. Probably wouldn't love as much, though, if I revisit it, to be honest. But most recently did the film Apollo 1.5, which we reviewed on this channel. Wasn't too crazy about, so not really... I'm interested more or less by the prospect of him, I guess, than what he typically does. But he has a new film out now, and that film that we're discussing today is Hitman, which was co-written and directed by Richard Linklater, starring Glenn Powell, who also co-wrote the film as well. He plays a guy named Gary Johnson, I believe, Gary Johnson, and he is a school teacher. He studies in psychology. I believe that's his whole thing in college, as at least I presume, because he likes to ramble a lot about, psychology and philosophies. And when he is not at school, when he is not, working as a professor, he works undercover in the police department as an undercover cop. And in his profession, he has disguised himself, or at least his other alter ego, as we come to see, is that of a hitman. And as a hitman, he comes in, gets people to confess their crimes, and once they confess their crimes, they go to jail, and he just goes on to his next case, puts on his wardrobe. It's basically for him a big acting gig, and he's very good at it. And he meets a girl, and he's fond of her, finds her interesting, finds her also frankly innocent initially, and what spirals is a more of a just him coming into her world, her troubles, her dilemmas, and becomes more or less a dynamic between these two and their relationship spiraling or growing simultaneously into something a little bit more than meets the eye. So like I said up front, Richard Linklater is a filmmaker that I am not too crazy about. I liked Boyhood the initial time that I saw it, but I'm pretty sure if I revisit it again, I probably wouldn't love it as much, because the thing about Linklater that I've always taken issue with is that he feels the need a lot of times to explain his films. A lot of his films, at least the films that I've seen of his, have a tendency to really explain their situations ad nauseum. They're not films that pretty much let their circumstances play. It's more or less we have to explain it just because it's just our style, it's our sensibilities. And it kind of shares that of like Wes Anderson to a certain extent, where it's like we need to explain a certain volume. And, with that, the film does ramble a bit. There's a repetitive nature in terms of the delivery of its ideas, because ultimately it boils down to, as the character's profession is, at least the one that people know of him for, is that of about psychology, and it's pretty much so what the film is about, more or less to do with how one believes themselves to be a certain idea, and then ultimately becoming that idea, and the whole psychological endeavor, the whole psychological idea where you believe one thing, and then when you allow yourself to become that thing, you ultimately, in turn, personality-wise, are that very thing. and you're no longer faking it, you're now pretty much that thing. And in this film, they explore that in both the literal and metaphorical sense. And there's engagement to be had, I think that I think it's written well, even though I think that the presentation of said dialogue is quite repetitive. The literal writing, what's on paper, is nice. I think the performances are decent. I was not expecting Matthew McConaughey. I thought he was he was not too bad. Sorry, I meant Glen Powell. Because you can't tell me that that's not Matthew McConaughey. I mean, it's basically just a downgraded Matthew McConaughey. So performances are fine. Craftsmanship generally is troubling, but there's still some engagement to be had. It's still at least competent enough. Again, it has this tendency to ramble on end, but it's at least there's some intrigue and there's some interest to be discovered and not complete boredom. So, but the other issues that I take with it, and really what I think kind of diminishes my overall experience with the film, is the development of this dynamic. Because there comes a point where the female, who by the way is just written so poor, I wouldn't say poorly, but just excruciatingly annoying, because her whole purpose in the film is to be an object for Glen Powell, because Glen Powell's character is just a charisma, figure. He's never ever in danger. He's never in conflict. There's no point of real consequence to the character, or really to their dynamic. To be honest, they're indestructible. They're basically that of a superhero couple. Or some just unstoppable force. Nothing happens to them throughout the course of the film, and thus the real tension of the film is rather absent. But more specifically with their characterization, specifically that of the female, my goodness, I mean, it just gets super annoying. I mean, she is so clingy and so desperate, and with that, I just could not really stand her, to be honest. She makes a choice that also, frankly, at that point, even long before, to be honest, any guy who would be with this girl would have left her long before she makes a critical decision in the film. And if you guys have seen the film, you guys know what I'm referring to. She's just trouble. There's nothing about her that's appealing. She's oddly sadistic as well. Strangely is influenced by Glen Powell, even though it's not what he intended. There's things about how they develop this relationship that I understand in the context of a dark comedy. I understand what they're going for, because ultimately that is what the film is, that of a dark comedy, while simultaneously trying to be that of a rom-com. So, it's trying to delve into those sort of spheres, we're gradually evolving that into a dark comedy, but it just doesn't deliver on the very point of its humor. It's just not that aware to the viewer, or frankly to itself. It's just, I'm looking at my notes, by the way. It's just there's just a loss of grip in understanding and rooting for them, this dynamic within their circumstance. There just comes a point where you're just okay, there's really just more or less hypocrisies and not really a groundedness or a real tenderness, or like I said, some understanding to their situation. Now it's just that they're just basically on the other side, to say without spoiling things, but I found the developments to be a bit troubling. I found the characterizations to be rather thin, especially that of the female. I just did not think she was. I really feel like she wasn't provided a good character. It was just, she's just an object in this film. That's what she is. She's just an object. Most of the time, their relationship is just purely sexual because of how they set it up. So, frankly, that is exactly what she is. She is an object, and what he is just is just that of charisma. That's it. He's nothing more than that. He's not more dimensional. He's not more deep. He's just charming. And that's not enough. That's not more informative. It's just rather shallow. So, but like I said, there is engagement to be found, and I think that I think that it has some strengths in its craftsmanship, within its literal writings and its screenplay. Performances are fine. I don't take issue with the performers. I mean, they're okay. They're not doing anything like great. Like I said, Glen Powell mostly kind of reminds me of that Matthew McConaughey if it was a lesser version of that. I just take issues with how much it rambles. It's an issue I've taken with Linklater just as a filmmaker. I don't like how he chooses to ramble, and the developments and the characterizations are either thin or lacking in much understanding or real attachment, really. So yeah, I don't mind it. It's okay. But as time goes on, I just found myself, one, annoyed by the characterizations, mainly with that female. The lead girl, I just found her to be annoying. Not in performance, just her character. But because like anybody would have left that girl a long time ago. She is just trouble. Absolutely is just trouble. But it's also by just the point of when certain developments, revelations happen, it kind of goes a little, it kind of loses the plot a little bit, and kind of feels a little nonsensical. Like, you get what's going on, but you're not really like, oh, okay, yeah, now it's all gonna come around, yeah. Like, then it sort of ends in a place where you're just like, okay, yeah, sure, but it doesn't feel like an earnest spot. It doesn't feel like it feels as though when that ending happens, you're supposed to go like, yeah, yeah, awesome. When it's just more like, okay, So it's not bad. It's totally okay. That's the way I'll put it. I just think that better characterizations and frankly just better laying out of information rather than it being such a ramble, I think would have heightened my engagement rather than being a little snoozy, to be honest. So yeah. So is there? Oh my gosh, talking about the timing. So yeah. So those are my thoughts on Hitman. It's okay. It's totally fine. Nothing notable. Nothing to write home about. Nothing terrible. It's okay. So yeah, so those are my thoughts on Hitman. You guys, let me know your thoughts on Hitman. If you guys have seen it, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below in regards to Richard Linklater, your thoughts on Glen Powell. Seriously, like, he's basically Matthew McConaughey. Like, I found out also they were born both in Texas, so it's just, I don't know. Maybe it's the accent, I don't know. But just like, yeah, dude seems like he's just trying to be Matthew McConaughey, but I don't know. You guys, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. And hopefully I've got the audio this time, so we shall see. But thank you guys for tuning in, and until then, I will catch you guys in the next video. Bye.